Hush, little baby, don't say a word. Daddy's gonna buy you a mockingbird, yeah. And if that mockingbird don't sing, Daddy's gonna buy you a diamond ring, yeah. And if that diamond ring don't shine, Daddy's gonna sleep.
We'll just get right into it. So we're gonna be talking this time out about daughters, and specifically the daughter and father relationship. We're fathers ourselves, and we have a lot of opinions, a lot of helpful opinions. We also have some advice as far as maybe what not to do. But like I said, we're fathers, and I think we're qualified to at least talk about this subject from a first person standpoint of view. And as usual, we'll have some advice at the end of the show that our listeners can soak up, take in, and apply or not. It's up to you guys, but it's our responsibility to bring it to you nevertheless. So without further ado, as we do every show, I'd like to start off with some factual statistics about fatherhood, and we'll delineate between United States versus specifically Black fathers. I think all this advice that we discuss in this podcast will be helpful to all fathers, no matter what the color, but we'll be respectful rather and delineate which is which. So about 67% of Black children are born into a single parent household. But in general, there are 24.6 million fathers in a married two-person household with kids younger than 18 years of age. That's white and Black and other races involved in that within the United States. There are 2 million single fathers also in the United States. From a percentage standpoint, 17% of all single parent households in the US are single fathers. And of that percentage, while it's a small subset, Black men with sole custody of their children is actually an unrepresented minority in itself. According to the Pew Research Center in 2017, children living with single Black fathers make up about 4% of the population. The breakdown of single fathers are as follows: 44% divorced, 33% never married, and 19% separated, and also 4.2% widowed. Now, the other side, the flip side of this is 33% of all children, which is approximately 24.7 million, live at home without their birth father, according to U.S. Census Bureau. 72.2% of Americans think an absent father in the household is the most important problem facing American families. However, in 1960, only 9.1% of children were living with a single parent. But by 2012, the number had risen to 20.7% of all children in the United States. So that's what we're talking about. Not necessarily absentee fathers, but this podcast is for the fathers who are there. We want to talk about some of the challenges, maybe even some of the trials and tribulations that come with that relationship between father and daughter.
Yeah, definitely.
First thing I would definitely want to ask everyone is to state your age and state your daughter's age.
So yeah, I'm 41. My daughter is 15.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm 52, be 53 in a couple of months. And my oldest daughter is 16. And my son is 2.5, and my youngest daughter is 4.
Okay. I am 49 and my daughter is 25. So we've got different degrees of experience based on the age of our daughters, and even our own age, and even our own personal experiences growing up. So you guys, any one of you guys can jump in, and you know how we do.
Yeah, definitely. I think this topic is a very deep and important one to me because my daughter is at that teenage stage where there's so much going on, right? She's coming into womanhood, and there's a lot for her to juggle on her plate. But as well as a dad, there's this innate sense of like protection, right? Of like trying to protect your daughter from maybe a young guy that you once was, or guys that you once knew at a certain age, right? And this is the stage where hormones are raging. Um, Society also has a very strong hold on our children, especially in this generation with social media and entertainment and what they should look like and act like and speak like. And so there's this juggling match that you have to play, and also trying to delineate, or even even separate yourself from, like, sometimes the way you were raised, right? Because a lot of times I think what happens in society is that we sometimes feel a bit of like, I don't want to raise my child like my parents raised me.
Mhm.
And in some cases, when you look back at it, it's truly not all that bad, but there are some things you want to do differently. And I think that's also a struggle as well, right? Is trying to figure out ways of raising your child where you may have felt you didn't have as much opportunity to think on your own and do things the way you would like. And you try to give your child that same, especially a girl child, that same leeway for her to grow into who she is born to be, So I think that's to me, that's a struggle for me personally, but I've spoken to other dads that are going through that same process, especially the ones who have daughters the same age as mine or in the same type of activities as my daughter is into. We have had those conversations a lot of, trying to figure out ways to steer your daughter in the right direction, and keep her on the right path. That's the toughie. That's a tough one to keep trying to fight with. As I said, you're always fighting with society, and the things that she want to do, or things that she wants to be into, or things that she wants to listen to and see. I think all that's a struggle. How have you guys dealt with that? Like when it comes to like music or like things they watch on television. Are you guys pretty, Sean, I know your daughter is adult age, but in those situations, did you dictate what she watched or listened to? Duncan, do you currently dictate and watch what your daughter does? She's a teenager. How do you handle that and address some of those things that, some of the things that we probably would not want our children to listen to, especially on the radio, certain songs on the radio, certain TV shows they're watching. I mean, TV shows for their age group is becoming a lot of it is very adult themed.
Yeah, I guess I want to go back to that. What you said before when you're talking about your daughter, and what you would like to give your daughter versus what you got as a child. Those things. That's something that you deal with. I think with all three of my children. You definitely want to give them a better life, a better upbringing. Maybe not repeat some of the things that your parents did that you thought maybe was not acceptable. But you always, that's something that, we definitely, you don't want to spoil your child, but at the same time, you want to make sure that your child has what he or she needs. And I talk to my wife all the time, my two little kids, they're getting things that we just didn't get at that age. And to your second point about the trying to monitor your children, we do monitor, and we do try to look at what she's watching and ask questions, whatnot. But you try to not to be overbearing in that situation. And you don't want to constantly looking over her shoulder. You try to want to trust your daughter, your child, to give them some leeway, some room to make good decisions. But at the same time, you still have to have some type of, you still have to, monitor what they do to an extent. So that's always a balancing act. So that's kind of how it is in my household.
Yeah, so I'm slightly different. in terms of my style of fathering. There were times when I felt like I could have been more sensitive emotionally to my daughter. She turned out fine. She got her master's degree. She's a software engineer. She's independent, living on her own, living an independent life. She's doing great. And I told her a lot in terms of morals and how to be strong, how to be vulnerable. I taught her a lot career-wise. I was a kind of father that I prefer to show both sides of the coin, so the good and the bad. Like, I protected her, but I protected her probably a little bit different than you guys. Like, I showed her the good, but I also showed her the bad so that she could recognize it when she saw it the first time.
Yeah.
That went for whether we were talking about, again, healthy relationships, whether we were talking about boys, whether we were talking about STDs, whether we were talking about music, entertainment, television, all of that. When there was an unscrupulous person on a TV screen, I pointed to that and told her that's what you don't want to be, and it's why you don't want to be that way.
Right.
And I did it that way because I wanted her to develop. Two reasons. I wanted her to develop a strong sense of judgment. And I also wanted her to recognize things that were not for her when she saw it. And I also wanted, that's the third reason, I wanted her to be able to learn some things on her own. My thing is, if I give you the data, if I give you the information, that's what I'm supposed to do. But I can't protect you all times of the day. So I need for you to have and exercise good judgment. And if you should fall and you got to learn the hard way, I'll be there. But the lesson is what's important.
So just briefly, if y'all don't mind, let's look at the dynamics of each of our households and how our daughters grew up. And I think me and Sean have a similar situation when it comes to our oldest daughters. I think, and Troy has a little different situation, probably more favorable. But I know, from speaking for myself, and Sean, if you don't mind me saying that, we were single parents, and and I had we had a divorce, and so my oldest daughter, was raised in two households, and it may seem a little bit, we always talking about single parent households, but in some situations you have, these extended families where you have, like in my situation, where you have my oldest daughter, who was raised by her mother and myself, but two different households. And so in one instance, it may look like, not a favorable situation, but at the same time, she also has had the benefit of a mother to raise her, and also a stepmother to raise her as well. It was rocky in the very beginning after the divorce. But once I think I got married, things seemed to get a lot better between the relationship of her mother, my ex-wife, and myself, which is good. I was always in my heart, I was always kind of, kind of maybe upset at times and curious to wonder if the divorce really affected and how it affected my daughter. That was always something that was in my mind. As she got older, we got her a counselor. I never saw anything. She never mentioned anything, it being a problem. But, we wanted to make sure that she was, mentally stable, and kind of understood the dynamics of the two family households. And so it's been going really well, being raised by her mother, who was a good mother, and my wife, in two different households. So that's the kind of dynamics in my family. And it's, even though things did not turn out for us, I think my daughter, it turned out pretty good. She's almost a straight A student, and so she's doing real well. And I trust in her mother, and I trust in her individual judgment. And so that's kind of the dynamics in my household and how things have turned out.
Like you said, similar situation with myself. I also went through a divorce. Around that time, I believe my daughter was around 10 or 11, maybe. And I'm pretty sure that she suffered a bit from that happenstance, from that event. But I've told her from day one, and it has never changed. I always reinforced in her ever since she was old enough to understand that your father is always going to be there for you. No matter what situation occurs, I will always be there for you. Mm-hmm. I recall, now that we're talking about this, there was a situation where I got a call from her school, and they told me that she was in the bathroom crying by herself. And that broke my heart because I knew what it was about. And it was about, the divorce, the separation, the divorce really affecting her in ways that as a child that age, she wasn't able to understand, let alone express how she felt. Mm-hmm. And so I totally understood it. I'm not sure. I know her and her mother and I, we had our differences as far as whether or not she understood it. But I understand why, because her mother too was raised in a single parent household. And so the concept of a father being as dedicated as I was probably a little bit foreign to her. So, but I was there, and her mother was there for her too. We just couldn't be there for her together. But when it came to parent teacher nights, when it came to games, her mother did more games than I did, admittedly. But when she was part of the band, her mother was there. Right. During that halftime game, I did several games. I did probably more than several games. I can't even count. But it took us a while, but we learned to put our differences aside.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And understand that we both need to work together for the benefit of our daughter. Now, that wasn't always easy. Mm-hmm. There are times even to this day when I feel the tension, and it's almost like an unspoken competition between us. And her mother's married now. I've remarried, so we're good as far as our respective families and relationships. But when it comes to her mother and I, it almost feels like this subconscious competition of who's trying to be the better parent. And we both know each other are good parents, but, it'll be tension over the silliest things, such as, I think the last semi big thing was making sure that my daughter's healthcare insurance, because she's 25, she's not on our insurance, right? So the big thing was to make sure the healthcare insurance that she chose for her new job was sufficient. I've been able to just sit and have dinner with her family, stepdad, mother, sisters, all of that. And it goes well. And it took a lot of maturity to get to that point. And the one thing that I definitely want to put out there to fathers who are having difficulty with their ex-spouse or their call them baby mamas or whatever, all that anger, all that resentment, all that fighting, like if you could just lay off that for a minute and try to see what if the other person is rational, if the woman is rational, if your baby's mother or your ex-wife is being rational and fair, if you could put aside your anger and resentment and she could put aside her anger and resentment and y'all could get on the same page, trust me, it's worth it. And your children, whether it's a daughter or a son, in the long run, it benefits you both, and it definitely benefits that individual, that child, I should say. So, yeah.
No, I agree with everything you guys are saying. Duncan, as you mentioned, yeah, me and my wife, married. We, I haven't been divorced, and raising my daughter with the same woman I'm married to. It's funny though, as you guys talk about, like, and Sean, you alluded to this with like a little brief bit of competition. I even see some of that made in our household, right? There's certain things my daughter is able to run to her mom for, compared to me, and I am the more so the disciplinarian, or I guess the tougher one, or in our case the bad cop. It's a little, that has become. It's funny because that has become that's new. I think when she was younger, it was definitely the other way around. I was the one that spoiled her or allowed for more leeway, but as she hit the teenage stage, I think that turned around, because I think a bit of that was just the fatherly fear of her getting older, right? And this idea, this idea of protection kicking in. And I think with her mom, it's more of the sense of relating to her as a young woman, because my wife was once her age, right? And all of the things that my daughter may be experiencing, my wife has experienced. So the relationship is a bit different. Now that my daughter is older, I tend to be the more stricter one, and sometimes have to be talked down off the ledge a bit when it comes to like allowing her to do things or see things or watch things, or I tend to be the more of the hard line one. So there's something I've been working on, trying to be a bit more open, and not as overly protective of her. I think some of it, and I tell people this a lot, I only have one child, so I always tell people, I like my parents had, my parents have 4 kids. One of us can mess up and they still have 3 to go, but I only have 1. So if I don't do well with her, it's it, that's, I'm done for. Right. So like, is this attitude of like making sure I turn out a decent child,
Right.
And especially a decent young woman. Right. Cause you see what could happen if she goes wayward. And like I said, there's so much pulling at our children in general, but I think for our young ladies, there's a lot pulling at them. Like I said, I'm in the car and I try not to be the father that doesn't listen to her radio stations or, don't allow her to listen to the music that she may like and, her generation is listening to. But man, it is so tough because the messaging, and you hear them singing along to it too, and you're just thinking like, yo, that messaging is not really good for you, but it's, trying to have those conversations with her. And I have like having those conversations, like, do you really understand like what, the lyrics of this song is saying, and what that means? And then I also try to remember and remind myself that I truly was once her age, and I can't lie and say, NWA, I didn't sneak listening to NWA or some of the hip hop music I was listening to, or even the reggae, because my parents are from the Caribbean. So like the reggae music or the dancehall music I was listening to was very different than the reggae my parents was listening to. So like a Bob Marley or Peter Tosh or even a Barris Hammond, these are reggae artists that are more love song and song about uplifting community and so on and so forth. And I'm listening to dance hall music, which is more vulgar. And this type of music my parents didn't want me playing in the house, or didn't basically want to hear me playing. But yeah, I would listen to that. So I'm, I try to always remember that, yeah, I was once her age, and I kind of did some of the same things she did, but just trying to guide her a bit more.
Right.
Than my parents did me, that this thing of like, just want to guide her a bit more and let her know like, hey, some of these songs that you're listening to or things that you're seeing, it's not things that you necessarily need to be,
Right. I just piggyback kind of on what Sean was saying earlier, and we've seen a lot of tragic situations and a lot of situations where we've seen, baby mama drama, and and I've seen a lot of situations where, like Sean was saying earlier, the child and when there's drama between mother and the mother and the father, and that directly will affect that child. And there are a lot of women, baby mamas, that refuse to let their the fathers of the children to see to see their child, or and it goes the other way as well. There are a lot of men not stepping up to the plate, whether it be paying child support or being there emotional. I think being there emotionally and physically there for your child is more important than any money. And definitely need to have that. But I think you need to be, as a man, it was very essential for me to be there emotionally and physically for my oldest daughter. That was paramount. That I did not fail in that effort. And so, to your point, that there, I just want to say this, to all the men out there, and women out there who find themselves in this situation, whatever issues, whatever drama, whatever that you have between each other, let that go. It's not worth it. The mental stability of your daughter, of your son, of that child. You need to let it go and think about the child rather than trying to get back at one another. And I see a lot of that going on. Trying to one up, on the next person. My ex, it's been really, really good between me, and I guess I never thought that it would actually be that way, but our relationship is really good. She and my wife get along very, very well, and it's all to the benefit of my child, my oldest child. And so, I just want to say that whatever drama that you two got going on, let that go for the benefit of that child. That's the most important thing.
Right. Definitely. One of the things that I kind of skipped over is the subject matter of blended families. All right. And this definitely applies to me because even though I grew up in a single parent household, my mother didn't stay single. Okay. And I had a stepfather in my life for about maybe 6 years of my life. Good and bad in those 6 years. So the concept of a blended family wasn't exactly new to me. And I'll tell you how that benefited me and coming up in a later exchange. But suffice it to say, I saw my stepfather, and kids aren't stupid. They see and they hear things, and I had to experience the trials and tribulations and challenges of seeing my stepfather divorce his wife, and he had 2 kids prior to meeting my mother. And so I witnessed like the going back and forth and some of the arguments and the screaming and hanging up on the phone. I saw all of that. But I guess I understood at an early age, look, when you have a departure of a man from the household, there's going to be some challenges and there's going to be some tribulations that if they're not on the same page, they're going to have to work that out eventually. And I eventually got to see that happen with my stepfather and his ex-wife. And I got to meet my stepsister and stepbrother. They would be allowed to come over to the house by my stepdad's ex-wife and spend time with me. And we got to know each other. In fact, we don't have a tight-knit relationship to this day, but we talk on social media here and there. Moving back into blended families, one of the things that I failed to mention earlier and how having that early experience benefited me was that when I married my ex-wife, she had a daughter from a previous relationship. So when her and I, started seeing each other, got married, she had already had a young daughter. And that unto itself, being a stepdad, that was challenging because I had to deal with whatever her dad was telling her. And it was not nice, against me. It was not nice. And so that caused a lot of behavior challenges with I don't even want to call her my stepdaughter, just call her my daughter as well. Things that I was too young and I didn't have any experience with that, dealing with a kid who just didn't like you for obvious reasons. You the stepdad. I mean, I tried everything from trips to Sesame Street, Sesame Place, I should say. I tried taking her to mother out because I knew it was a package deal. It's a package deal. And that's what I want to say to a lot of men out there. Like, look, it's a package deal if you're dealing with a woman who already has a child. My stepdad knew that. And so it benefited me to see how he handled certain situations dealing with a blended family. So if you should separate from your baby mother or your ex wife, listen, there's nothing stopping her from meeting somebody nice. That person, if she qualifies that person, which you have nothing to do with, if she qualifies that person and they decide as adults they want to be in a relationship, guess what? You are now part of a blended family from that point of view as well.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And you got to deal with that. You got to have the patience and understanding. As long as that man is respectful and loving and protective of your daughter, you ain't got to get upset about the situation. You need to go and meet that man and get an understanding. Like, look, I'm a father, but she's not going to be with me. She lives with y'all. So I'm a parent too. I'm an active parent. I don't want to be fighting and arguing with y'all, but I do have an interest in my child's well-being, especially around you as a man. I don't know you, and I want to get to know you.
I never had to deal with that situation. Yeah, which is good. Yeah, you're exactly right about that. I always wondered what would happen if she, remarried. She hadn't remarried, and I didn't have to deal with that situation. I think luckily, because I always wondered how would I deal with that situation. But you're exactly right. That was something that was always in my mind if she gotten remarried and how that whole dynamic would work. But luckily, she and my wife got along real well, and almost from day one. So yeah, that's definitely a big situation. Somebody told me the other day, I guess getting back to general topic, somebody said the other day that when you have a child, it's like for the rest of your life, you're actually wearing your heart on the outside of your body.
Mm-hmm.
you know. And I thought about that so much. I was like, man, you never lied, you know, because your feelings are out there. And I was looking at something on social media the other day, and it was and they were asking this black man, black guy. I guess the guy was probably in his 30s, and they asked him. They said, "What is it like raising a black daughter?" And you know, he's big, muscular guy and everything. He said, "Man," he said, "it's the most humbling experience in the world." He said, "Put me back down to earth. It made me realize what was important in life." And that's kind of how, you know, I see. He said it humbled him, and so that's kind of how, you know, I see even my children, and we've talked about this before. You know, I wonder how would it be like if I had a job that was paying me, you know, $200,000, and I was out, you know, away from the home, you know, 4 and 5 days a week, and that sort of thing. How would that dynamic, you know, affect my children? And so, you know, luckily I'm in a situation where that is not the case, because right now, in my mind, the most important thing to me in my life right now is making sure my son and my 2 daughters get what they need, and they get the emotional the emotional comfort and stability in their life that they need to grow. And I think that's the most important thing that I can probably give to them right now. I can, you know, giving them physical possessions and material things, you know. I think that's, you know, and not being around, I think, to me, and I've seen many situations like this, and I'm not talking about anybody out there that found themselves in a situation where you're working a lot. I understand you got to take care of your family. I'm not talking about, you know, that's just my personal opinion about how I view my family. But it's Bernard Shaw just recently passed away, and he was a CNN anchor. I think he died at 82. And one of the things that he lamented further in his life was that he did not spend more time with his family. Mm-hmm. He said he was all over the world. He was in Europe. He was there and there. He was, you know, doing his job. But he lamented the fact that he did not, that he missed his family, that he wished he spent more time with his family, went on more trips with his family. And so in a nutshell, that, I guess that's how I don't want to be that person when I'm 80 years old or whatever, to say, look, I didn't spend that time. And I admire Troy. You know, he goes to his daughter's games, constantly there, you know, that sort of thing. I think those things are so important. We minimize, you know, those things, and not us, but I think people in general minimize the quality time that you spending with your daughter, your son, really does to raising that child up to be the best that they possibly could be. And then, Sean, you have a successful daughter, so it kind of speaks for itself. But spending that quality time, you know, I go to my daughter's her volleyball games, you know, when she was playing sports a few years ago. So, you know, those times to me are extremely important in raising a good, stable daughter and son.
Here's a question, Duncan, because you brought up the sports. So, guys, when, you know, your daughters were younger, did you find yourself? I don't like doing this, like saying things are masculine or feminine, right? But did you find yourself pushing more of like what society would consider to be boy activities on your daughters, or, you know, like, for instance, here's a great example. I did not go out of my way to find my daughter like Barbie dolls and baby dolls to play with, right? So if it was something she was interested in, I bought. But I don't really feel that I went out of my way to buy those things for her. So like my daughter grew up playing with Legos. So like I know I would go to the store and buy like Legos for her to build. And in my mind, it was more so buying these Legos because I thought it was better than just like playing with any type of doll or action figure, right? I thought Legos would be good for her brain activity, for her development. So I end up buying like little Lego sets, like the toddler style, big blocks. And eventually it became something that she was really interested in. So we end up buying Legos like all the time. She had like every type of like Lego set. Did you guys find yourselves doing things like that, or did you, go out your way to make sure, the things that society considered to be female like buying kitchen sets and, those type of things.
Well, I paid a lot of attention to my daughter, especially, in those, especially in the first, I would say 13 years. So I watched her go from Barbie playhouses to Barney. That was huge. And then she learned to read. I started recording all that stuff and saving it for posterity, I should say. I watched her go from Barney to her thing was also Buzz Lightyear. Instead of flashcards, I would put up computer parts like a hard drive or a stick of RAM or a processor, and those were our flashcards. She remembers none of that, right? She's a software engineer. She remembers none of that stuff that I was doing with her at that age, by the way. But to answer the question, I basically let her kind of give hints as to what she was interested in, and then I supported it. I supported it wholeheartedly. If she had questions about something, I just was there to answer those questions, and her mother was there as well, obviously, and I just supported that. And so when it came to the career side of things, right, that's when I really got back into the technology aspect. But even with that, I basically drove her around one day, and I asked her, we drove to different communities around the Atlanta metro area. And I asked her, I said, I want you to pay attention to everything that you see around you, the businesses, the restaurants, the amount of McDonald's here versus over there. I want you to look at the people. I want you to look at every aspect of what is on this city block in these different parts of town. And then I discussed the differences with her, and I discussed the types of individuals that occupy those places and those businesses. And I explained how maybe I kind of gave an assumption of how they got to that point, whether we were in a community with a payday loan check cash in place, or whether we in a community with mansions and $300,000 homes, or middle class, upper class. And so I said, I want you to take a look at the world around you and all these different aspects, and I'm going to explain to you how I believe things came to be. And I said, based on those aspects, what do you choose? What do you want? How do you want to live? What do you want to be able to do? You want to be able to take vacations? You want to be able to save money and go shopping, or you want to be able to invest? You want to be able to have money long term? Like, what do you want to do exactly? And I asked her those questions based off what I had explained prior, with us circling around all those different types of communities. And based on her answers, I said, well, if you want to be able to travel, you want to be able to save money, you want to be able to do the type of things that you're saying you want to do, here's a list of careers that you're going to need to look at. And you could choose one. You could do what your mother does. You could do what I do. You could do what your cousins do. You could do what your sister does. And so we had a real in-depth conversation about path and direction in life. I think that was probably the pivotal moment where I kind of influenced more than I normally would have. But growing up, I just let her do her.
Yeah.
Let her do her.
Yeah, it was kind of the same way. To be honest, my daughter, my oldest daughter, who I was talking about earlier, she actually has a better relationship with her mother than she does me. I think it's almost natural. I kind of backed up a little bit because first of all, I knew, even though it didn't work out between me and my ex-wife, I knew and still know that she's a good mother.
Mm-hmm.
And I trust her, and she's shown that. She's, she's a teacher, has been teaching for a long time, and has gone off and gotten a specialist, and she's a nurturer, and she helps to guide my oldest daughter in the right direction, and I can see that. And so when she was interested in drawing, we kind of, and she, loved to draw, and she's very good in drawing. We kind of veered her toward maybe architecture, something to be an architect. And that's something that she's now kind of interested in.
It's very important to instill a sense of good judgment. But even before they can have good judgment, right, they gotta have good self-esteem, right? And so speaking of that, what I want to do is I want to drop some terms, starting with self-esteem. I mean, how do you guys feel that fits in the raising of daughters, and what fathers can do to instill that in their daughters?
Oh, I think it's huge. And I think that's one of the things I alluded to, like just being there, encouraging her. I think one of the things that we have to learn to do as men raising daughters is being a part of every aspect of their life, even the aspects that we sometimes would usually leave up to mom, right? So always encouraging them as well, about, and not just about their beauty, right? Like, I think that's very easy to tell your child and your daughter, she's beautiful, but more so, building up not just on her look confidence, but her thinking, the things that she do, letting her know that she's able and she's capable of doing anything she puts her mind to. Like I said, I had to learn to not be so overbearing. So allowing my daughter to take the lead on certain things in her own life helps build up that self-esteem and that confidence, where I'm not always trying to, again, I'm guiding, but I'm not leading, right? It's a big difference from guiding and leading. Right. So allowing her to lead while I guide. I think it's always compared to like her driving, right? Because she's driving now with a learner's permit. But, initially when she started driving, I was always giving commands and direction. But at some point I had to stop, right? And allow her to showcase that she's capable. And honestly, all the direction and all the teaching that you're doing, and if you're constantly doing it and not allowing them to grow, it becomes, they become weary of it. It becomes too much, and then they just don't want to do it no more. So, yeah. It's just like I said, it's just like her with driving, so eventually I had to be quiet and just sit in the passenger seat and let her drive. And then when we got to the destination, and when she gets to her destination, I congratulate her, right? So it's the same thing in life. I sit back and let her drive. And when she gets to her destination or the point that she wants to in life, I have to applaud her and let her know I'm proud of her. So it's those type of things to help build up that self-esteem and her confidence, is just constantly encouraging her. And never forget telling her she's beautiful, right? But not just that, it's not just pointing on the looks, because I think that's easy. It's more so diving deeper down into who she is, and pulling out the things that you see when it comes to her character.
Hey, Tough Talk listeners, Troy here. For the second part of Raising Daughters, we will go even deeper into discussion of raising daughters from a father's perspective. Topics like relationship and sex, self-esteem, being an individual, and allowing our daughters to grow and blossom without trying to control every aspect of their life. We'll also drop a few gems that fathers can follow to help build a much stronger bond with our daughters. We hope you enjoy it. Peace and blessings.